Hi, I'm Jonathan Bojarski, founder of Saxophonisto.com. Welcome to this special Mummer String Band edition of the series, where I talk with some of the creative minds who have helped to shape that distinctive string band sound into what it is today. Many of these folks are personal heroes of mine, immensely talented individuals who often work behind the scenes to create the incredible productions showcased at the annual Mummers Parade in Philadelphia. Boy, do I have a special treat for you today. This is a slight departure from the Mummer interviews I have brought to you thus far. Up to this point, we've been hearing from some of our most beloved string band arrangers, but today we will hear from one of our greatest teachers. Bill Garton is a truly extraordinary individual, a teacher of teachers, an extremely accomplished musician. Bill is universally renowned and respected as a gifted educator who has taught hundreds upon hundreds of musicians over the last 50+ years, many of whom themselves have gone on to achieve greatness as performers, teachers, and arrangers. Bill's list of students reads like a virtual who's who of notable musicians in the greater Philadelphia area. Bill grew up in a tight-knit neighborhood in South Philadelphia, surrounded by a number of talented musicians. His father played banjo with Quaker City String Band and was an inspiration to Bill from an early age. He saw his father in costume and dreamed of one day becoming a mummer himself. At the age of 7, Bill took his first saxophone lesson with Johnny Mayer, beloved music director of Quaker City at the time. It was John who provided Bill with his first motivation toward a career in music. Bill went on to become a member of Quaker City, marching alongside his father and making many great lifelong friends along the way, including Harry Rivell Jr., Jackie Jordan, and Bob Quaile Sr. As he got older, Bill came to the realization that music was his true passion. He attended Glassboro State College, studying under Donald Norton, and earned his BA in music in 1965 and his master's in music and education in 1967. While he studied, he taught. He taught in several schools at one time, traveling from one to the other, spreading his love of music to young people who were so eager for encouragement. Finally, in 1968, Bill took a full-time job teaching music in the Berlin Township school system. And during his 23-year tenure, Berlin Township boasted the first and possibly only elementary school jazz band in the region. In 1990, Bill left Berlin for a chance to work at Overbrook High School as band director, and during his time there, Garton built a Berlin band into a musical powerhouse known throughout the region and beyond for their excellence. The Overbrook Jazz Band won Best Band in the state of New Jersey year after year under Bill's leadership. In his final year teaching, the band won not only Best Jazz Band in New Jersey, but also #1 band in the Berkeley Jazz Festival and #1 band in the University of the Arts Jazz Festival. After his retirement from teaching at Overbrook in 1996, Bill was not one to sit back. He continued teaching at the University of the Arts. And importantly, during this time, it was when Bill started working with Herb Smith, teaching the Fralinger String Band. As time went on, Bill took on more and more of a teaching role with the band and ultimately helped to shape the band into the unprecedented 8-time in a row exceptional musical organization that it became in the early 2000s. Bill took Herb Smith and John Winnega's amazing arrangements and brought them to life by having the band play in ways they had never played before. Bill is an extremely warm-hearted, gracious, and grateful man. Bill will tell you that he would not be who he is or where he is without the loving support of his wife, Eileen, and all of his many loving children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Bill's story is so inspiring. Bill is a role model. He's the kind of human being who we can all look up to, who we can all learn something from. I am incredibly honored to be able to share his story with you. So enjoy my conversation with the great Bill Garton. I am so excited to have Bill Garton with me today. Bill is a legend in the mummers string band community and also amongst musicians in the greater Philadelphia area. He has taught so many individuals, both individual musicians and ensembles, and has a truly stellar reputation. Bill is the genius teacher behind a lot of Fralinger's winning work in the early 2000s. He was really responsible for bringing that ensemble into really extraordinary levels. And he's done so many other things, and I think so many of us really want to know some of the story behind Bill Garton. One other thing that struck me is in doing all of these interviews with so many mummer legend, one name that has come up time and time again is Bill as an instructor. Jim Fox, Chris Farr, many musicians I've spoken with have mentioned Bill as their sax teacher. And I thought it was important to really hear Bill's story. So, Bill, it's really an honor and a pleasure to have you talking with me today. I'm thrilled to have you here.
My pleasure, Jonathan. My pleasure.
Bill, I'd like to go back a little bit and let's just start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a musical family? How did it all get started?
First of all, I lived in South Philly, so that tells you something right there, right? And I lived on a street called Fairhill Street, and there were a lot of musicians. So I remember as a little guy, maybe 5, 6 years old or something, all the guys got together on New Year's Eve at 12 o'clock, and they started to parade down the street and around the streets. And all. It was amazing. That was just an awe. Like, holy mackerel, this is something else. So finally, that was the first thing that really got me into music, seeing that. And then I said to my mother and father, I said, I want to be able to play sax. Well, I was too young, 5, 6 years old, but when I was 7.5, actually, they got me a saxophone for Christmas. And so at 9 years old, I was in the string band. But the background, getting back to my mother and father, my mother, she was a singer, and she used to, my sister was a dancer, and my father played banjo. And both my mother and father also played piano when they were kids. So my mother used to MC my sister's dance recitals and sing in between. So that was there. I was just hanging out, a little guy, just hanging out all the time. But when I was 9 years old, I got into the string band, and most of the guys on that street were in Quaker City String Band. So Quaker City String Band was amazing. Such a family-oriented organization. It was just awesome. Above them, he said, Dad, please bring home some string band music. So I'll do it in one condition. If you can sight read it, we'll let you come into the string band. I said, oh, okay, bring it home. So I read it the first time. So it was not a problem. So I was in. So he must have talked to Johnny Mayer about that, because Johnny Mayer was my teacher. He started me on saxophone. He was the musical director of Quaker City at that time. He was a legend right there in his time. He was just a legend in his era. The first suit was a military suit that somebody else had, and I was 9 years old when I was playing in my first parade. Billy Davis was one guy that sat next to me. There was other guys, Patty Walsh, there was other guys, Harry Rivel and Jackie Jordan, they were in the back. These were guys that were really great musicians. So I learned from them. I was one of the 5 junior members. It was myself, Harold McCall, Charlie Cathcart, Buddy Farr, and Jimmy Rivel, and myself. So we were 5 kids that we weren't able to be in a parade at that time because you had to be 12. But when it was 1955, I was still only like 11 and a half at that time. It was 1955. So, but I was the youngest one, and I felt like a big guy because I was the youngest one there and able to, just play in the parade. I had to carry a headpiece. I asked my father, I said, Daddy, how many miles did we walk today? But I loved it, carrying a headpiece and all. And so I was in Quaker City. So 1952 to 1966. And it was just a great time. Like I said, it was so family oriented. Just people would just take you by the hand and just, be great to you. graduated high school in 1960. I worked at a McDonald's when McDonald's first came out. I worked for a plumber, and I found out that I didn't like taking orders. It was just, I couldn't handle taking orders, and doing things for a minimal amount of money. So I said, what can I do that I really love? And music. Music was always my life, and I love kids. I loved to help younger kids at that time. So I went to college for music as a clarinet major. When I went to the audition, I played clarinet, and I started on clarinet, I guess, when I was like 13, 14 from Lampiro, who was another tremendous person. He's still my guru in anything and everything in life. I went to Glassboro State College, and it just was awesome. Just playing on clarinet, and my clarinet teacher was Dr. Donald Norton, who was another tremendous guy. He just did so much for me, and I enjoyed clarinet because I guess at 10 or 11 years old, I told my parents, I saw the Lawrence Welk show. I want to play clarinet just like that Pete Fountain. And that was my inspiration, the Pete Fountain. Whoa! So they got me the lessons with Lampiro. That's how that came about. Thank God, because that's the only way I could have gotten into college at the time. Like I said, because they didn't have sax majors. So then I graduated in 65, but before 65, Johnny Mayer, who had gone to a lot of schools, he set me up with some Catholic schools in the area. So in my sophomore year, I started teaching. On the side.
Wow, you were already teaching as a sophomore in college.
Right. I was fortunate because of Johnny. So he got me to Our Lady of Grace School, which is in Somerdale. My daughter was born when I was teaching there, and they just were awesome. So I had that school, I had Annunciation School, Assumption School, and I taught at Cardinal Doherty. I had a chance to be their band director at Cardinal Doherty High School. Now, in Philadelphia area at that time, Cardinal Doherty was the epitome of music programs. They had a marching band that traveled all over and traveled to Europe. It was just a top-notch program. In 67, they offered me that job to be the band director. Whoa. So I was flying high. I came home and told my wife, I said, Cardinal Doherty wants me to be the band director. But meanwhile, I was going for other interviews, and I went to Berlin Township Schools. They wanted me to also. Well, if I go to Cardinal Doherty, that school's going to be my wife. And it's going to take away from my private teaching and from playing on the outside, which I love to do. So I took the Berlin Township position, and the rest is history with that. I was there 23 years.
Oh, wow.
And we turned out, now 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, Jonathan. It's 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And we had a jazz band, which at that time we called a dance band. But they had the concert band developed. We actually had a marching band that we performed at the Phillies games a couple of times. We went everywhere. We did a video with my jazz band, Japanese video. It was on Kids World. I don't know whether you ever heard that program called Kids World. And it was on like a Channel 6. It was a national show. The kids used to eat their lunch real fast and come down to the band room. But, you only get that if you have complete support. You have to have a great principal and superintendent. And once again, I was very fortunate in having that. Same thing at Our Lady of Grace. It was very fortunate having people that really wanted it. At Our Lady of Grace, I don't know whether you heard of the Quaile brothers, Quaile family. Well, they went to that school. But I was teaching them already privately. Well, I taught Bobby first, Bobby Quaile. He was a sax player. So that went fine because the sax wasn't a problem at that time. And then, so about a year later, Tommy came along. And Big Bobby said, Bill, you're going to teach Tommy accordion. I said, Bob, man, I don't know anything about accordion. I really don't. He said, don't worry, stay 2 steps ahead of me and you'll be fine. I said, okay, Bob, okay. And so then the next year came around, Denny, Bobby says, Bill, you're going to teach Denny guitar. I said, Bob, look, I don't know anything about guitar. He said, you told me to know anything about accordion. Listen to how good Tommy's playing. Denny guitar. I said, okay, we'll do that. So, and I tried, and they were doing real well. And I changed Denny when I taught at Our Lady of Grace eventually to play baritone horn. And I changed Tommy to playing the tuba because he could read the bass clef with the accordion left hand. He was able to see the bass clef. So they were in my school band in Our Lady of Grace in the meantime. And well, then next year, Jimmy came along. And Bobby says, you're going to teach Jimmy drums. I said, okay, Bob, I had that in school, but I'll do my best with that. He said, you'll be great. Don't worry about it. And then finally, Michael came along. So he said, Bill, you're going to teach Michael how to play guitar. I said, and don't tell me you don't know anything about guitar. Listen how great Denny's playing guitar. And so I taught the 5. So they came over my house like every Wednesday night. The 5 of those kids were over my house. They took over my living room. My wife watched whatever TV they wanted. And while I was teaching one. But Big Bobby Quaile, Sister Loretta Therese, Johnny Mayer, Len Piero, Dr. Norton, you don't get anywhere without the good roots. So and you build from that because that's how you learn anything and everything. You learn from your people that taught you, and you never forget who taught you. I know one of the quotes from Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker said, I don't know why everyone wants to listen to me. What they should listen to is the people I listen to. Okay, so then I taught at Berlin Township, and we had a very successful band. I think at the time, we were maybe the only elementary jazz band in the East Coast. I don't think it was unheard of to have an elementary jazz band. Junior high came about a little bit, as I was teaching more, but it didn't happen in the beginning. So it really took off in the South Jersey area, and then other schools started to have like jazz bands, elementary jazz bands. We'd go into competition, and compete against junior high schools, and we would win, against junior high school bands. One time I did a clinic on how to develop an elementary jazz band. I heard some comments, other people said, when they heard it, said, man, that's really a bad high school band, but it's a great junior high band. Well, we were 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And
can I ask you, Bill, as long as we're talking about 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, how was it teaching students of that age group? And what were some of the things that you did to teach kids of that age to play so well in an ensemble, that you were an award-winning ensemble that was playing for high school groups and other things? What were some of your tricks of the trade at that point in your career?
Well, I was able to, at Berlin Township and Our Lady of Grace, we were able to give a lot of private lessons in the school and small groups. So that helped get it going, but you develop, I always had a mark where you have to get to this lesson part, this page in your lesson material before you're able to be in the band. If you can't reach that, so what do kids do? They work real hard. And then one trick that worked like $1 million all the time, and I used it everywhere and anywhere. In fact, even at the string bands, I used it. I used to take out a $5 bill out of my pocket. And that was a lot of money at that time, $5. And so I said, anyone who can hold their breath for a minute, I'll give you $5. So that motivated kids unbelievable. It was just, did they ever get it? Yeah, some did. And so, but what happened, Jonathan? They practiced. But, and as well, you play a wind instrument, as well as I do, if you don't have air and control your breath, man, you ain't playing too well. After the breathing, holding the air, you had to be able to do like this, crescendo diminuendo, 13 seconds up, 13 seconds down. And they worked hard at it. Sometimes I have like one of my student directors, 6th grader, they would come up and I said, you directed the long tones. So I would play concert F, G, A, and B flat. The kids liked it. They had practice in conducting, and they took pride. You must motivate. One of my pet sayings is, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And they saw that I was giving them the baton. They thought that was the greatest thing. And so when other kids paid attention. So you're able to do whatever you wanted to do because they believed in me. And that was the whole key. It was a small town, but they loved it. People supported me. July 4th, we had a march in the parade. We had uniforms and all. Halloween time was really the breakthrough because that was the first time we had to go outside. And now you understand now, some of these kids are only like 4 foot tall, 4.5, some, and they're carrying drums, bass drums, snare drums, and marching with their instruments. They had their lyres on, playing with the music. So, but they loved it. They just loved it because we laid the whole parade all around. Motivation, people loved it. Discipline, I'm a firm believer in discipline. I can do it your way, I can do it my way. So there was never any choice. It was going to be my way because what did they know? They didn't know anything, so they didn't want to tell me what to do. But one of the parents says, Mr. Garton, the kids were in 4th grade. You were mean. The kids did not like you. I said, but it seems like in 5th and 6th grade, they really loved you. Well, I said, no kidding, because finally they're playing good, the way they should be playing. And so then all of a sudden they realize that and they're getting all this recognition. So the rapport that I had, I felt helped. And I treated them like human beings. Of course, when I get in front of that podium, now it's a different ballgame. When I get in front of that podium, whoa, here we go, rest position, playing position. So they had to know what rest position, playing position was. And there's no talking. There's no talking. There's only one person who's going to talk, and that's me, and you're going to listen. Now, sometimes I would break the ice and crack it up, somebody crack it up with one of the kids or something, and say jokes or things to get the kids motivated and do more. That happened for 23 years with that school. Then I went to high school. So I went to Overbrook High School to teach there.
This is around when, Bill? What year?
In 1990. Garton from 1967 to 1990. September, I went to Overbrook. And Overbrook had a good jazz band, really good jazz band. They won the state's one time when they were in a jazz band. But they had a lot of my students that were in there because they came from Berlin Township. So that helped. So the kids could play. So when I went into Overbrook, probably about a third of the kids were my kids. So did I have a problem with discipline? No, because the word got out. Don't mess with Mr. Garton. Because it's good and bad. I didn't want to be known as a meanie and disciplinary, but if that worked, oh well. They found out who I was after a while, because I was what I was as a person and not as a teacher. When as a teacher, that's a different ballgame. We had the jazz band met every day, and we were able to establish really a great jazz band. And I used the same principles. I had a lot of sayings, and one of my favorite sayings that I always used was, "If it is to be, it is up to me." Because I used to preface it by saying to kids, I'm not that smart, I'm not really that smart. But so I believe in 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. And the kids just latched onto that. To the day, I hear some of my students, they use that saying. They have it hanging up on their wall. Sometimes they're teaching elementary school, all the kids, and they said, "Mr. Garton, I have a 6th grade class, and I had that sign just where you have it, up on the wall." One of the signs I had up in Berlin Township in the band room was letters about 3 foot high saying, "Think." So as soon as they came in, they had, "Think." My first competition jazz band, we competed against other high school jazz bands in Jersey and Pennsbury, and a band director named Frank Mazzio. Frank Mazzio, utmost respect to Frank Mazzio. He's a tremendous musician, and he had a great band. It happened to be that night, that was my first one, and we won.
Wow.
So, wow, I beat Mazzio. That's amazing. So I was still humble, about all this. I can't believe this. Because they were really good, but we were, I guess, a little bit better in the judges' eyes. So Frank said to me at the end, he says, "Bill, if I had to lose to anyone, I don't mind losing to you." So I took that as a huge compliment. Well, my second year, we won again. That's where I had my first heart problem. And I was in a hospital right before competitions. And I knew I had to get operated on. And they said to me, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I have a jazz band competition." I said, "What's going to happen over this weekend?" And he said, "Well, nothing." I said, "I had to be with my band." Eileen, my wife, was so supportive of everything in my life. I mean, if you don't have a great wife, you don't have anything. Believe me when I tell you. She's beautiful, and she's everything. She took me to the school, and we had to do a sight reading room. Very, very difficult, because it's just what it was. You had 5 minutes to let the kids look at the music. Can't play it. Look at the music. So I used to have the kids sing their parts. My wife, my 3 kids, and my son-in-law at that time, they were all outside the sight reading room. They're worried to death about me because, I don't know whether you noticed, I get pretty excited, because, music's my living, it's my passion, and it's my hobby. And so I just eat, sleep, and drink music. I don't drink too much anymore, but it's just like, I just love it. So when I came out of that sight reading room, I was white as a ghost. So I rested, went into the cafeteria, and the band did really, really well. I couldn't handle staying when they announced the results. I said, I have to stay in the cafeteria. So Eileen and the kids, they all came to me, Kelly, Billy, and Timmy. They came, and, they sat with me, and I relaxed after we performed. Didn't get any sections awards. What? We got sectional awards all year. So I didn't get anything. But next thing you know, the kids come running in. "Mr. Garton, we won sight reading. We won sight reading." I said, "Yeah, we won sight reading." So, all excited. I said, "Well, what's next?" I said, "Well, we have to go back in and see who won." I said, "Oh, man, chances are, we didn't get any sections. We didn't win." Well, 10 minutes later, all the kids come running in. "We won, we won, we won." That was fun. So we celebrated quite a bit. And took the kids home on the bus. And now, in fact, I didn't go home, but my wife, she had driving. She wouldn't let me go on the bus with the kids. because I used to hit the roof of a bus all the time. And, yeah, we won. I just felt great, because it was such a high that we won. Came home, and all of a sudden it started to kick in a little bit, And I woke up the next day and said, well, I know why I'm going back. So I went back in there to the hospital again. In fact, Buddy Farr worked there. He was one of the junior members that I grew up with. That's Chris's dad. He greeted me, and then so he got me set up for all the rooms, so there was no problem. It was fine. Well, we've got good news and bad news. What's the bad news? You don't have any problems with your heart. There's no damage to your heart, but you have two arteries that are 99% blocked. The operation was a success at Jefferson. So I went back to school. In the third year, we didn't win. Darn. So I thought we had it made. We were playing some tough charts. Tough charts.
Like what's the sort of stuff were you playing?
We're playing Bob Mish's charts called in the 80s. Dynamic chart. Sammy Nestigo charts. It had features a trumpet player, Matt Cappy, who's a music teacher now and tremendous musician out in the musical world. He's known all around. We didn't win. We came in third. Well, that motivated me. I don't like losing. I just don't like losing. Because I'm going to give it all I have. I used to tell the kids there's 2 4-letter words. Those 2 4-letter words are hard work. Hard work. That's what we're going to do. We're going to work harder. Well, we used to say we won the following year. And the following year, I don't know whether you ever heard of Dennis de Blasio.
Sure.
Dennis de Blasio lives in Pittman, and I knew Dennis de Blasio real well. I said, Denny, I need a good funk chart and for the season. He said, well, Will, you want something that is written, or do you want me to write you something? I said, Dan, you want to write something? That's great. So he wrote it. So in between Christmas and New Year's, he says, Bill, I have the chart written. Come on over, listen to it. So he named it Garton's Brigade.
Really? Wow.
It was after, New Year's. So it was right around New Year's time. He said Brigade. So that's what he named the tune, Garton's Brigade. And it got published.
Wow.
And so we played that chart. And I need something to get the sax section get an award. No problem, Bill. By the time I left, we had it written. And we put it to use, not that day, but afterwards we put it to use. And we always got it. We were always in competition with Penn Saucon High School band. Penn Saucon was a dynamite band also. And they kind of did the same thing that we did, but they had the sax featured one at a time. They started out with a baritone, boom, 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 boom. Then they had the tenor come in, the third alto player, the second alto player, the tenor, lead alto player. We won every time. Every time we won with that. And against Penn Saucon, because they didn't like it, but we beat them anyway. And so that was 3 out of 4 years. Last year, it was a dynamic year. We went to Berkeley College, and they had the biggest jazz competition in the East Coast. It happened to be my last year, because my wife said, if you keep up the way you're going with my heart, because at that time I was teaching junior high for 2 periods a day and going to high school and playing on the side, teaching privately. He said, you're never going to see our grandkids grow up. So I decided, well, it's time to retire. So, but that was my last year, we won that. University of Arts, they had a big competition also for Saucon. We won that. And then finally was the States. And we played Malaguena. That was really, really a tough chart to play. Well, Malaguena really knocked everybody out. It was just unbelievable. Knocked everybody out. We won the States. We won the state of New Jersey. So we won that, and I said to the kids, this is my farewell. I said, we got the cake. And that was we won Berkeley. Put the icing on it for University of Art, and we put the cherry on top when we won the States. And I said, you're the best band in the land. And so that's my letter. One of the things I said in the letter that I wrote to them. This was a great 6 years, but once again, you can't do anything unless you have support. There was a fellow, Rick Kerber, tremendous trumpet player. He played all over. I mean, you name the star, he played for them. He come and said, Bill, I'd like to help you. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So one time he would say, I'm going to bring in a bunch of guys to play your charts, for states, so the kids hear what it's supposed to sound like. Oh. So he would bring in all pros, all other, like Ron Kerber would be the lead outfit player, trumpet player is Dennis Wasco. He would, you name the top guys around.
Wow.
And I had to direct them. So Rick Happy was a foot parent. He was my right-hand man. Tom was my left-hand man. Because those guys were always there for me, helping me. So I brought other saxophone players in. My son, Chris Farr, Skip Brad, I bring because they had to see somebody else than Mr. G. And they had to realize, this was not a one-man operation. It was from help from everybody, and I had to mold it. Some guys come in, they say something, that's a good idea, man. I really like that. I'm going to use that. Put that metronome on 2 and 4. Just sort of metronome, put on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and have them go to that, man. Feel that 2 and 4. But that 2 and 4 helped me with my teaching privately. How it gets the swing. Look at that 2 and 4 is, man. You don't know where 2 and 4 is, you never know where 1 is. And then I retired because I listened to my wife. I enjoyed every minute of it. I tell everybody, I never worked a day in my life. Because everything I do, I don't like, I love.
Sure sounds like you do. It sure sounds like you do. Just the way you describe everything, I'm excited hearing about it.
I just had to slow down. My playing slowed down. Eventually got out of the group. I had a group for a long time. Since in the 60s, I had a group. My last teacher I had, which was in 1968, going back to that because help also moved, was named Mike Guerra. Mike Guerra was the other guru that around in this area, in the Delaware Valley area. He was just an unbelievable teacher, and I learned so much from him also. One time, my son was going to be born. It was in 72. Mike said, what's his name going to be? I said, Timothy Joseph. Okay. Well, 2 weeks later, when I went to my lesson, he had a bond. He had a $25 bond for him, for Timmy. I said, wow. Every lesson, I would say to someone, Bill, take these grocery bags, take this grocery stuff home to your kids. It would really cook food. Take home for the kids will like this. Kids will like it. So all that molded me, and being so caring about your students. You love everyone. I always tell them, I'm going to teach you like you're my son or daughter. And I holler at them sometimes, though. So they got it. They got it. One guy from the string band put it pretty well, I guess. Jerry Crompton. He said, Bill, you really got some tough love. So it's tough love. You kick us on the pants, but yet you pat us in the back all the time. Because you had to communicate. If you don't communicate with your kids and want them to do things for you, you're not teaching. You're just not teaching. They have to feel your enthusiasm, your passion. If they don't think that, then it's not going to happen.
Speaking of Jerry Crompton, this is a good time to touch on this. I know that you've taught a number of mummers over the years, some who have gone on to become teachers and arrangers themselves, but who are some of the mummers that you've taught?
Yeah, here's a list of guys that were teachers and arrangers, musical directors. Jim Fox was the first one. He was a musical director and arranger in Quaker City. And Tim Garton, my son, Tim Garton, he worked with the Fralinger, the music, the way I worked with him. 14, so Timmy did 2015, and they won. But then Chris Farr and Chris is top writer, and he's now writing for Fralinger also. So that's a great thing. It's just, and then Kenny Nowinski, he was a musical director of Fralinger. Brian Saunders, just tremendous player and musician, teacher. And then Franny Kerr was the music director and arranger in Woodland. And then Tommy Rafter was a music director and arranger in South Philly at one time. And Buddy Bader, who is my grandson, is now the music director of Fralinger. And then Louis Polina is music director of South Philly now. So then John Renega, who I taught saxophone for about 2 years, and he's a musical genius. He's music director and arranger. So they're the 10 people that are now involved in string bands. Harry Ribble Jr., he actually came to me and wanted to play the trumpet. I taught him a little bit. Warren Ribble, I taught him saxophone. Jackie Jordan, Harry Ribble, Bobby Quaile Sr., they were my inspirations that I had in string band and in life, because Harry lived in my same street. And then Jimmy Ribble, his brother, he was in my group. Jimmy and I were like peanut butter and jelly. He was my buddy. And Jimmy Quaile helped with the percussion. It's a funny story with Jimmy Quaile. We would talk the music. He would say, I'll be singing the part to Jimmy. He's driving, right? I'm singing the part. You should do this with the drum part. Bill, do it. Okay, that sounds good. By the time we got home, we had the whole score percussion-wise done. Herbie Smith, Billy Bone, and Mike Guerra in Fralinger, they were the best. They were the best. And along with John Renega, those 4 guys, they were the best. Everybody had a supporting cast. And I always said, when you win, it's like a bicycle wheel. It takes a lot of spokes in that bicycle wheel for that to go around. And so everybody has to contribute and do their forte. And if you do that, things are going to happen.
I'm absolutely amazed by all of this, Bill. This is absolutely incredible. You're blowing my mind here. This is astounding. I just wish I had the luxury of having you as a teacher back in the day, but my goodness, you're just a wealth of information, and it's just astounding all that you've done. A little bit more before we close out on your high school career, which is just a storied, amazing career of teaching. Your high school teaching career, what were some of the other methods you used for really rehearsing your jazz ensemble? Things you've mentioned to me so far are bringing in other musicians to teach them, to play for them, having custom arrangements written, having the band sing. That was an interesting concept. So you actually had the band sing when they were doing their sight reading practice. Is that something that you did commonly, having them sing their parts and know how to sing?
That's more a common thing to do. Most band directors do that. Have to sing, because you're not allowed to play. So you had to communicate somehow, but you have to have ears. So I made them sing in tune, though. And it helped them, the kids, to sing the right notes and sing the right phrasing. And actually had the proper breathing. And also I have to say about the University of Arts, I taught the University of Arts for 14 years after high school. So the University of Arts, one of the fellows that was the teacher there, so he was retiring. And he wanted me to take over for him. So I couldn't turn that down. I would have loved to teach at the Arts. This way it made my musical career complete. I taught elementary, junior high, high school, now college. So I taught there 14 years in college, and I was a supervisor of student teaching. And I also taught intro to music education. So how to teach, the kids, what facets to go through. And doing that, just was good.
What are some of your other key pearls for teaching teachers? What sorts of things do you have them keep in mind when they're teaching students and learning how to teach?
Be yourself. Another thing that I had to tell them, bass players, guitar players that I observed, they didn't know the instruments, Jonathan. If you don't know the instruments, man, you have to do something. Because if you don't know the instrument, you don't know the fingering, how are you going to be able to correct? Mm-hmm. If you don't do that, forget it. So as a student teacher, you have to, don't let them play notes. Let them play the music. You have to understand it. Play the music. Make that notes jump off of that page. They're not going to jump off of that page. You're not teaching, because it has to say something. I say to kids all the time, when's the last time that E flat talked to you? They look at me like I'm sick, So I said, yeah, I am crazy. I know that. But it has to talk to you because you're not making a talk. Make that no talk. So pump them up, man. You had to pump them up, But I taught kids in fourth grade, man. If you can't take a breath after every two measures, you're not playing right. First page. If you had two whole notes in a row, you have to be able to tongue each without interrupting. The tongue interrupts the air, but does not stop the airstream. You understand that? You have to keep that airstream going all the time to make it flow. And always talk about discipline. Of course, there were some discipline problems. And I said, how to solve a discipline problem? Get your instrument out. Play. Mm-hmm. Play for them. Boom. Instant respect.
That's a great idea. Great suggestion.
You don't play for them. What do they have to listen to? What are they supposed to? They don't know. They're hearing what they want.
Right.
You know what they should be playing.
Right.
So
That's great.
I believe that they were always the things, the breathing. Take a breath every 2 minutes. Have my horn out. When in elementary school, I had a bassinet that was one of my daughters, and put my sax case on it. And on my sax case, I opened it up. It was my alto, my clarinet, and my flute. And whatever instrument I had to play, I played. If it was trombone, I played it. One time I had the trombones in junior high school for the first time. Well, those kids were scared to death. They were scared to death, because they heard about me. Mr. Garton's mean. I wasn't mean, really. I wasn't mean. I was demanding. It's just I'm trying to help them. So, well, they wouldn't stop talking. I stood in front of my kids that I had taught privately at Berlin Township. They knew what's what. So I stand in front of that stand. They knew to keep quiet. Other kids didn't know that. Well, I exploded. The next day, 16 kids dropped out of the band or something like that. Goodbye. So they knew what? They couldn't handle discipline. Well, you got the wrong guy. Every Friday we had a test. You had to learn this scale. You had to learn this scale. You had to be able to play that passage. And I want to hear each one of you play it individually in front of the band. Did you think they learned it, Jonathan? You don't right to learn it. You have to be accountable. If you're not going to be accountable, how's the band supposed to play? How's the band supposed to sound? How's the ensemble supposed to sound? Whether it's an elementary band, high school, junior high, college band, string band, doesn't make any difference. I use the same techniques in every band I taught. The only thing that changed were the names of the people in front of me. Adults are no different than kids. They want to be disciplined. If they're not disciplined, they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. They're going to do what they want to do.
Right. Your students, it's tough love, but because of that, they have become so successful, and you've been so successful as an ensemble leader, as a student teacher, and teaching students how to teach, which is quite remarkable. Bill, your career is just astounding, and the things that you've accomplished through your teaching career are just, frankly, mind-boggling. It's just amazing to me all that you've done, and I love being able to hear these stories from you, to just know how you shaped this career of yours, and how you're continuing to impart knowledge to future teachers. We've heard so many great things, Bill, about your teaching career. It's just truly remarkable, all that you've accomplished through your life with teaching so many students, hundreds and hundreds of students, and so many award-winning ensembles. What I'd love to hear now, though, is a little bit about your history with the Mummers. And we know about your history from the first interview with joining the Mummers as a kid and really learning how to be a musician with Quaker City String Band and those who took you under their wing at that time. But I'd like to learn a little bit about how you got involved with Fralinger, how you got to know Herbie Smith, and how that whole relationship started.
In 1975, my oldest son, Billy, he wanted to go up to comics, believe it or not. So I said, Bill, I don't know that, but so anyway, being a good father, I did. So I said, okay. So we did that for 5 years. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I had a lot of fun with that. When my time period, he was taking drum lessons. So with the drum lessons, he wanted to be in a string band. I said, oh, thank God. This is good. So I said, well, what band? He said, I don't know. He said, I think it's better to go to the best musical band, I think. And that's Fralinger, because of Herbie Smith. Herbie Smith, put out some arrangements on New Year's Day that were changed mummery in string bands, changed the way, He just had his arrangements are all gold medal. He's just phenomenal. I had Billy join playing. This was in '81. I think at Convention Hall. He actually played the snare drum. The street beat snare drum, and with Bobby Mateo, who played the main part. I didn't join at the time because I was still very busy with my teaching and playing. And I said, I'll just be a good father. 1-2 years, about some of the guys said, Bill, when are you going to join? When are you going to join? So I said, okay, I'll join as a marshal. So I joined as a marshal. I didn't play. I just joined as marshal. And I was a very bad marshal. It was terrible, but we had a lot of laughs, and they laughed. They still pick up that story, still to the day. So in '96, when I retired from teaching, so I went to Herbie. I said, Herb, look, I'm willing to help you in any way you want. I said, I'll hear each individual play, but you have to tell me what you want from that music. He said, Herbie, no, you do it, Bill, you do it. Because at the time, all you saw in string band music were just the notes. And then sometimes a slur or something. There were no dynamics, there were no phrasing. But they did it individually. Maybe going to rehearsal, they might tell them what to do, but it was never in the markings that I saw. So I said, you want me to do it? I said, I want to change it a little bit. I said, let's be fine. You just do whatever you want. So I would put it in all the markings. All the markings I would put in, or whatever accents are. Don't play da 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 da. Understand? Do da. Stuff like that. Those two notes, know those marcatos, know those accents. So I had ways of saying it, the da for the accent, the do for the dot for the marcatos, and the dit for staccato. So I always. They remember my lingo, and they played it. They played better. There's no two ways about it. They do play better. So that went on for 2 years, maybe 2-3 years. But Mike Guerra did something for me with my high school band. He arranged the marching. He was a drill instructor for marching for 1 year, and so he saw me teach. And so I think that had a factor. He talked to Herbie. He should let Billy do the band. I started to do that, and then I would take over, and he would play.
What year was this approximately, Bill?
Maybe about 98, 99, something like that. I did that for a while, and the guys didn't know what it was. But their first time I was in front of them, Jonathan, I gave them the fundamentals. And I said this, you can only go as high as your foundation is deep. If your foundation is weak, man, you're never going to get to be where you want to be the best forever. So I gave them embouchure studies. I gave them long tones. All the things that Mike Guerra gave me for my very first lesson. So this is what I gave Fralinger. I gave them a foundation. I had a good portion of my students that were in there, so they knew what was what. So they knew what they had to do. I did the long tones with them. They didn't like that at all. They didn't like it. Put the $5 out, and nobody ever won. Again, what did that do? Man, it's the same thing. It's just different names in front of me, different age. It's still fundamentals. You want to play right? This is what you have to do to play right. You get control of your instrument. So got to be a point where some of the guys, they wouldn't show up for the beginning of the band rehearsal because they didn't want to do that stuff. I just put them on the spot when it came time to play them. I've told them to play something. It's just embarrassing. So they didn't do that too many times. But you have to be accountable. You have to be accountable. You just don't mess when I'm in front of the band. This is how it is. But every band rehearsal I started out with the long tones. When John Chink came, sometimes I would get the music that night. The first time I had a sight reading. And we just did it measure by measure. I would tell them what to do. First after you do this, second after, tenor, baritone, bass. This is what you have to do. If I got done 32 measures, that was productive rehearsal. That playing the music the right way, making the notes jump off the page. Express yourself. Play with enthusiasm. Then when John came, I did the same thing, but only on the spot. On the spot. John would go up working with the banjos or something, and he comes down, says, man, that doesn't sound like the same music I wrote. He loved it. He loved it. I said, well, that's good, John. I'm glad you like it. So that's what we did. I had the full control of it. I had the full control. I would listen to other ideas. Anybody said, look, I don't care if I have the second best idea, but it's all right. If it's something I like better, we're going to do it. So that's how I ran the rehearsal. Intonation. Well, I don't have to tell you about intonation with the string band, right? I have to tell you that. This is what I would do. I said, some guys, when you're playing, so you think you're not being heard. I'm going to show you how we're going to play one note, and you tell me whether you hear a difference. Play concert B flat, and I will tell whoever in front, Warren, Kenny, Timmy, whoever's in front, to play F sharp. You have 50 horns or 45 horns, whatever it was, all playing concert B flat, and one's playing concert A. You heard it. You heard it. So had to make them listen to one another, because in an ensemble, if you only hear yourself, you're playing too darn loud. You're supposed to blend in with everyone. It's a sound. It's just a solid sound. It's boom, like that. Somebody sitting playing a fat chord on a piano. That's developing the solid ensemble sound. Every Sunday we'd have sectionals. Well, I would go around, Jonathan, to each section. In fact, the banjos, they couldn't wait till I got there, believe it or not. They wanted me to hear, and they wanted my input, how to express. You want, don't just say, no, you don't do, get those accents in there, make it come alive. So, again, Jonathan, sometimes the rule is you shouldn't have anyone play by themselves. Well, that's true, because you don't want to embarrass anybody. But I had you play by yourself. It was one of two reasons. I wanted you to show everybody what it should sound like, or if you don't know it, then you're going to learn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be accountable. I drilled the band musically. I drilled the band musically, and I would be in front of them. They would go through the routine, and I had a whistle in my mouth because I couldn't get on top. And so I had a whistle in my mouth, and I wanted to make sure everything was balanced properly. I did that for a few years, and then I said, okay, we got to go back to the beginning, and let's go. We got to go back and blow the whistle. No, you banjos, you're not projecting them. Turn that down. Saxophones, hold those saxophones up. Don't you understand? The judges have to hear you. So I would do all those subtleties to make it better, but on the spot in the routine as they're drilling. So I would stop and start. I would have maybe about a half hour. They didn't like it, but I didn't care what they liked either, because that's why I said, I really don't care what you like. So you're going to do it anyway. So, because ask me if I do care. And I say, no, I don't care. I'm going to make it good. That's all. I'm going to make it the best. And so they accepted it. They really did. I had to give them credit. They accepted it. They didn't throw rocks at me or anything. They listened to what I said. And one time I had a van. It was 1987 van. I would take one guy at a time. Come into my van. I had those luxury chairs, those captain's chairs in there. We'd sit back and turn. And so they would come in, the door, they'd be shaking. They'd be nervous. They said, "Oh, what's wrong with you, man? Bill, this is different." And so, don't worry about it. It's me. It's all right. It's the same thing like a lesson. And kids that I taught, they would come in scared. Afraid. They would come like this. They're shaking like that. So I said, it's okay. But they came in, they never liked it, but they always did it. I said, all right, go get Joe Blow next. I'm telling next, go get him. I didn't get out of the van. I was like a priest hearing confessions all the time. They would come in my van, different person would come in my van. And I would hear them. And each Sunday, I did that. So I heard everyone. Now, there was one or two guys that have tried to avoid me. And, well, they did, but they suffered for it because I had other ways how to talk to them. So it's all that one-on-one sectionals going into each section. You're doing a great job. Like I said, kick them in the pants, but pat them on the back. Praise. You must praise. That's part of teaching.
I want to play just a little excerpt for those who may not be as familiar with Fralinger's work, because there's people who are going to be viewing this interview who may not know string bands as well. I'm just going to play a little bit from Fralinger 2005. I was actually standing on the street that particular year. I wasn't playing that year, but I heard Fralinger perform, was standing right in front of them, and I was blown away by just how tight the ensemble was. That was very difficult music, and I had frankly never heard such difficult music played by a string band up until that time. I mean, there's been tough music played by Furco and Quaker City, but just the articulation of this music. So this is early 8 in a row winning Fralinger. This is their 3rd year winning now. But just want to play a little excerpt from this so people can just see what you were doing with a group of amateur musicians, making them sound in an ensemble the way that they did. I'm just going to play 20 or 30 seconds of this. Just remarkable how tight that ensemble was. And, just to think these are just, these are non-professional musicians playing the most difficult music I had ever heard at that point. And, the way you were able to shape that ensemble to play those articulations the way they did, truly remarkable. My jaw was on the ground when I saw that live New Year's Day in 2005.
It's nice to hear that.
I'm going to play just one more quick example. This is from Fralinger with their 2008 Cowboy routine, again with some really nice work with the tenors here, and I just thought they did a really great job articulating everything, and it just goes to show how playing an ensemble, playing together really makes all the difference in that sound. Here is a little bit from Fralinger 2008. Just great stuff, and just the way that they, again, through all of those 8 years, played together and continue to play together. It's quite amazing how beautifully that ensemble performed together. And I just want to show briefly, I'm going to screen share my. This is just to show the years that we're talking about that you were involved with Fralinger. And you said you started in the mid 90s, but then you were involved with their 8 in a row. So 2003, 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 8 years in a row of winning. And those were all years that you were directing the music for the ensemble. And they also were quite extraordinary in 2002 as well.
Well, I was directing the ones down the bottom, that boxcar, a couple of them. I was directing them too. But, it's the same thing I tell my student teachers. It takes 5 years for your program to be intact. So you have your program happening and your way of playing.
One other thing I wanted to ask you is, did you have involvement in providing input from the actual music selections that were played by Fralinger, or did you provide suggestions to John or Herbie about, well, I think this particular rendition is better than that? I mean, I know John Wanega was famous for bringing all kinds of rewrites and rewrites and rewrites. How much input did you have in sort of providing critique?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot with the, I always said everybody has their job. Because some of the guys said, oh, why should I be practicing? We may not be able to do it. I said, because it will make you a better musician. Just practicing. You're going to make yourself a better musician. Sometimes I would say music or tell John maybe one thing, or you might change this part, it's like to make it more like a 3/4 type of thing, or whether, it might come off a little bit better. He would know because he's got a memory like an elephant. He can remember all that stuff. That's about the only time. That's how my input was really like 2%, 3% on what tunes to play. That was their job. They had to coordinate the music. It was my job to make the music happen. Those guys were the creative ones in doing that, and I was the creative one in making the notes sound like music.
Well, Bill, I'll tell you, it truly is remarkable hearing all of your stories and all that you've done over the years with not only the Mummers, but obviously many, many ensembles and many, many students. It's truly incredible. Tell me what you're up to these days. Are you playing music still? Are you teaching? What are you doing?
Oh, I'm still teaching probably a little bit, but I'm kind of winding down with that also.
I understand you've got some grandkids that are keeping you busy these days.
Oh man, my 9 grandkids and 1 great grandchild. 5 girls, 4 boys, and now the granddaughters. That's 6 girls now. Chelsea, Buddy, and Bill and Dylan. They're all music majors, graduates, music majors. Chelsea is the choir director at the Clearview Middle School. Buddy is the choir and band director at Haddonfield Middle School. Dylan, he's just a drummer that's musical as anything, but he didn't want to teach. Dylan's listening skills are superb. So he's a drummer that has a great ear. My son, Billy, he has 1 girl and 2 boys. And the girl is a graduate of the Penn State. The oldest boy is an electrician. Bryce, he's a senior in high school, and he's got colleges all over the place recruiting him. And Tim has 3 girls, Haley, Emily, and Kylie. And they all are musical. All kids, all 9 kids have great ears. Tim's oldest, she can sing like a bird. Little Kylie, she's 5 years old, so she's the baby until my great-grandchild came in, can sing like a bird also. And they know words. I said, how do you remember those words all the time? He said, I know, Papa, I hear it. Well, that's like my wife. My wife, she can sing like a bird also. Any style.
I understand your son got an award for teaching last year.
I was so proud of him because he got the most outstanding teacher in the Winslow Township District. He's a hard worker. He's a tremendous music teacher and tremendous saxophone player. My son-in-law, Buddy, also was in Fralinger. And in fact, that's how he met my daughter, Kelly, who's my daddy's little girl, naturally. And that's how he met her through Fralinger. So now Billy's wife, she's a nurse. And she's really a tremendous nurse. We're so proud. Eileen and I are just so proud of all the kids, all the grandchildren. The great-granddaughter, Maisie, young Buddy's wife, he's married to Sierra. And they're the one that gave us our first great-granddaughter. But we're just super elated, Jonathan, over everything that our kids and grandkids have accomplished. And when we go into concerts and soccer games for the rest of our lives, love them to death. And that's what it's all about. Family is the most important thing you're ever going to have, family.
Well, you've got an awful lot to be proud of, and I know that they're proud of you, no doubt. And boy, Bill, I'll tell you, I'm just so thrilled and honored to have been able to talk with you today. It's just so exciting for me to be able to hear this history and hear your story and hear some of your tricks of the trade and just hear the backstory and all these things. I've so enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
With another couple of hours, but that's all right.
So it's so great to see you today, and I've really loved talking with you, Bill.
Same here. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for letting me do this and sharing this with you.
Oh, it's really great. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to share this with other people.
one thing as a musician, you got to learn to share the gift that is given to you.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you, Bill.
Everybody, thank you so much, Jonathan. Pleasure. Bye-bye.
It was so enlightening for me to hear all of Bill's stories. What an amazing career he's had, the number of students he's taught, all of his winning bands, all of his accomplishments. What a gifted teacher. And it's just so extraordinary that we have him in our mummer community. Those who have been taught by Bill are truly blessed, and I'm grateful to be able to share his story with you. So, if you've enjoyed these videos, please share them with others who you think may enjoy them as well. And as always, let me know if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions. I always love hearing from you. Stay tuned for more. There's more interviews coming down the pike. So, talk to you soon, and for now, have a great day. Bye.